Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, we get an update on toxic exposure legislation that might affect millions of veterans. Are neck tattoos allowed for guardians? In important news from the Space Force, we check out a new policy for incoming recruits. Then we dive in with the Navy SEAL's newest submersible in Mil-Tech with Todd South. Also, in defense dollars, we see how much the Pentagon is spending to backfill the Stinger missiles sent to Ukraine. That and the latest news is coming up on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. In the lead up to Memorial Day, a major bill that would impact millions of veterans started to gather steam in Washington. The promise to address Comprehensive Toxins Act, or Pact Act, would recognize exposure to toxins, such as fumes from burn pits, as a hazard that service members could get treated in the Veterans Administration medical system. Momentum reached a high point just before the annual Memorial Day motorcycle rally in D.C., and Military Times' Capitol Hill Bureau Chief Leo Shane dropped by to update us on the legislation.
We made a promise to you. Whether you're going to storm a hill with a machine gun and take out 50 people on the face of imminent danger, or if you're just on a desk trying to make sure enough trucks are there so that you guys are getting the shitty breakfast that you eat on FOBs. You give up everything for us. Your families, your sense of security. And we promise you up and down that it's going to be more than just lapel pins and salutes at stadiums, but we don't deliver on it. And I apologize. I'm sorry for that, because we haven't proven worthy.
Recently, there's been a lot of movement in Congress on the Pact Act. This is sweeping toxic exposure legislation that could help as many as 3.5 million veterans in America. That's 1 in every 5 veterans in America living today. And what this would do is it would provide more benefits and more medical access to folks who were exposed to all sorts of nasty things while they were serving overseas. Burn pit smoke, chemical defoliants like Agent Orange in Vietnam, even some nuclear exposure, radiation exposure in certain areas where troops were serving. What this would do is it would make it easier for them to apply for both disability benefits, get money back for their wounds, and also get more care at VA hospitals. What's been happening so far is a lot of times folks will come back, not know they're exposed, not know they have these diseases just waiting in their bodies, and 8 years, 10 years, sometimes even 20 years down the road, they start to manifest themselves. By that time, veterans can't prove that it was their military service that caused their illnesses. So it's been very difficult for these folks to get treatment, to get care, and to get benefits for that exposure. In recent years, VA has been trying to make improvements on how to treat these veterans, how to help these veterans. They've been adding some more presumptive conditions to the things that folks who were exposed to burn pit smoke in Iraq and Afghanistan can receive care for, can receive benefits for. But lawmakers have said that just falls short of what they need. They need comprehensive legislation. Back in March, the House passed this bill, the Pact Act. Very expensive bill, over $200 billion over the next 10 years. It's been sort of caught up in the Senate, but just recently, senators have reached a deal to move it ahead. It could become law before July 1st. The president could sign it before then, but we still have to see a Senate vote. We still have to see some legislative maneuvers. So advocates are really hammering hard right now, trying to get it over the finish line because they say it's just critical that we help these veterans.
Toxic exposures are, they dug a burn pit, sometimes 10 acres deep, with jet fuel on them, and they burned everything from hazardous materials to human waste to all kinds of things. And people breathe it in. It's illegal to do in the United States, but that's what they were exposed to, and they all breathed it in. It's like an IED that goes off in your body 7 to 8 years later. And they earn the health care that they're entitled to, and they're being denied it. And that's what this bill seeks to address. I think most people have no idea that we poisoned our own troops because contractors wanted to cheap out on incinerators. We did that. 9/11 Ground Zero was the original burn pit, but that was an attack on this country. The burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan, that was ours. We made those. I refuse to say it's not going to, like, we're going to make it pass. We have to. We have to.
Congress comes back in the next few days. I would expect the Pact Act to be on the Senate floor in just the next few weeks. It's going to be one of the major pieces of veterans legislation we could see this summer, and it's expected to move through. That is assuming that there aren't other hang-ups in the Senate. And we did see one major hang-up with another veterans issue recently. John Tester was on the Senate floor trying to advance the nomination of a new Department of Veterans Affairs health official, but he got pretty frustrated that one of his Republican colleagues was stymieing that.
I would really appreciate, Madam Chair, if the senator from Florida would at least stay here rather than turn his backs on the veterans of America and walk out the door, turning his backs on the American veteran, the people who have served this country, the people who have fought. We're coming up for Memorial Day. I hope, Madam Chair, that the senator from Florida doesn't walk in into Veterans Day, to Memorial Day services and talk about what a great friend he is of our veterans, because he is not. All I'm asking for is to give the VA the tools they need to be able to provide our veterans with the health care that they have earned.
Senator Tester's outburst at Senator Rick Scott was surprising. We've seen lots of nominations get blocked in the Senate of late, but this one seemed a little more personal and a little more political based. Now, this is a position that we're talking about at VA that's been vacant since 2017. This is the chief health official, and it's been a point of frustration for both the White House and for Congress because there's a lot of health issues at VA, and they haven't had a Senate-confirmed official overseeing them for more than 5 years now. Senator Tester thought that the nominee was going to be moving ahead forward. He's gotten a lot of support from other Republican senators, but Senator Scott seems to be objecting not so much to the nominee, but really just to President Biden and his choice of a whole host of folks.
Throughout his presidency, Joe Biden and his administration have shown an inability to place qualified and competent people in many positions of power across the federal government. We've had crisis after crisis due to the failed leadership of President Biden and his appointees. Americans have been left with no faith in President Biden's ability to lead or appoint qualified individuals to serve in these important roles. And this nominee, who will be in charge of critical health care programs at the Department of Veterans Affairs, is no different.
It's unlikely that the nominee won't move ahead. We should have a fully confirmed Senate health official in the next couple of weeks here. But whether or not that has lingering effects for other veterans legislation remains to be seen.
I'm going to tell you what this is, Madam Chair. With all due respect to the senator from Florida, this is obstruction at the worst, because this obstruction stops our veterans from getting the health care that they need. You want to talk about why the American people think the United States Senate is dysfunctional? Senator from Florida could look in the mirror.
So that's the big veterans news to watch for on Capitol Hill over the next few weeks. But over the next month, the big military news is going to be the annual defense budget and the annual defense authorization bill. We've already seen a lot of work on that, but over the next few weeks is when they're going to start crafting those initial drafts and get past them out of both the House and the Senate. We're looking at a defense budget of about $773 billion for fiscal 2023. That's the number the White House put out. But actually, I expect that to go higher because the Defense Department has already admitted that that doesn't factor in a lot of the inflation figures we've seen over the last few months. There's a 4.6% pay raise for troops included in all of that. It goes into effect next January. But again, that number doesn't include all the inflation figures we've seen since the beginning of the year. So that number is likely to go up. There's going to be a real fight between Democrats and Republicans, not over whether or not to increase the defense budget, but how high should they increase the defense budget. Republicans have already said we need to go much, much higher to counter all of these extra costs, to counter all of the growing threats. Democrats have said, yeah, we probably do need to move it up higher, but they really want to rein it in, spend some more of that money in other domestic issues, not just keep it in the Pentagon and the Defense Department, which saw some record increases during the Trump administration. So we expect those figures to be out by the end of the month. Maybe mid-July we'll see the defense budget pass. The hope is to get the whole thing done before the start of the fiscal year in October, but with an election coming up, with other things, that's going to be a tough call for them to get all that work done. We'll be following all those stories on militarytimes.com over the next few months. For Military Times, I'm Leo Shane.
Thanks, Leo. In other news from around the military, the Department of the Navy recently released a renewed strategy for how to combat climate change, calling climate change, quote, one of the most destabilizing forces of our time and an existential issue. Navy Secretary Carlos Del Toro said bases like Virginia's Norfolk Naval Base and the Marines training area at Parris Island, South Carolina, could soon be unable to perform their missions. The plan calls for reduced emissions and base energy demands, and making preps for future volatile climate conditions. And over in the Space Force, a new policy will allow incoming Guardians to get wide permission to show off body art. You want neck tattoos? You got neck tattoos. An Air Force memorandum outlined an allowance for Guardians to show more ink than airmen, including those neck tattoos and tattoos behind the ear. It's not wildly permissive. There are steep restrictions on size and placement of the ink, but it's more than most service members can get. The tattoos only can be on the back of the neck and can't exceed 1 inch in size. And that's it from around the military. When we come back, Daniel Woolfolk brings us the latest from the defense industry in this week's Defense Dollars.
Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Daniel Woolfolk, and this is Defense Dollars. The U.S. Army is moving on its plan to backfill some 1,400 Stinger missiles that it sent as immediate support to Ukraine to defend itself against the Russian invasion. The U.S. Army awarded a $624.6 million contract to Raytheon Technologies, and the Pentagon said Raytheon will build some 1,300 missiles with a completion date of June 30th, 2026. Raytheon Technologies says the contract includes engineering support and test equipment. Stinger and Javelin have both been in high demand in Ukraine. The Pentagon sent more than 5,500 Javelin anti-tank missiles since Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24. In May, Congress passed a $40 billion spending package for Ukraine that authorized the Biden administration to send another $11 billion worth of U.S. military equipment to the country. The Brazilian army wants a new reconnaissance vehicle and has written up requirements for it. They want up to 221 eight-wheeled vehicles with either a 105mm or 120mm gun. That's according to a document sent to Defense News. The program is meant to replace part of the Army's fleet of EE-9 Cascavel six-wheel drive armored reconnaissance vehicles, which have 90mm guns. The price tag on the efforts are still unclear. Poland is accelerating the number of acquisitions amid Russia's invasion of its neighbor Ukraine. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry announced it has signed a letter of request to buy about 500 M142 high-mobility artillery rocket systems from the United States. Those are more commonly known as HIMARS. The Polish Ministry of National Defense said the first HIMARS contract was worth about $414 million. Deliveries under this deal are scheduled to be completed by 2023, and Lockheed Martin makes those launchers. That comes days after the ministry announced it had filed a letter of request to purchase 6 additional Patriot batteries from the United States, and those are made by Raytheon. The National Reconnaissance Office is expanding its use of commercial space services. The NRO is a Pentagon agency that designs, launches, and operates satellites for the United States government that observe the Earth. The spy agency used its electro-optical commercial layer program to issue 10-year contracts to satellite imagery companies Black Sky, Maxar Technologies, and Planet Labs. The NRO didn't release numbers for the contracts, but Black Sky said in a statement its deal is worth as much as $1 billion over a decade. Maxar said its contract is valued at more than $3 billion, and Planet Labs didn't release the contract total. Commercial satellite imagery is seeing increased demand, supplementing commercially owned space sensing capabilities and recently providing key insights into Russian troop movements in Ukraine. The Biden administration says that it will send Ukraine a small number of high-tech, medium-range rocket systems, critical weapon that Ukrainian leaders have been asking for as they struggle to stall Russian progress in the Donbass region. The multiple launch rocket systems are part of a new $700 million tranche of security assistance for Ukraine from the United States. That will include helicopters, Javelin anti-tank weapon systems, tactical vehicles, spare parts, and more. That's according to 2 senior administration officials. The U.S. decision to provide the advanced rocket system tries to strike a balance between the desire to help Ukraine battle ferocious Russian artillery barrages while not providing arms that could allow Ukraine to hit targets deep inside Russia and trigger an escalation in the war. What has been used so far for this? Well, among other things, a prized Soviet rocket launcher. It's what soldiers from the 93rd Brigade stationed near the city of Izium are using to defend against Russian advances in the Donbas region. According to British broadcaster Sky News, the Soviet-era multiple rocket launchers that was built in the 1960s can fire 40 102 20mm missiles at a target 20 kilometers away in less than 20 seconds. That's 12.5 miles. They can cause huge destruction over a wide area, and both sides have been criticized by human rights groups for the use of similar weapons. Also, one soldier among those near Izium showed Sky News a next-generation light anti-tank weapon he said came from Britain. The NLAWs are able to destroy tanks in a single shot, but only at a short distance. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has consistently demanded more weapons from foreign countries, including longer-range weapons, to support their efforts against Russia. Getting a full picture of the unfolding battle in the east has been difficult because airstrikes and artillery barrages have made it extremely dangerous for reporters to move around. Both Ukraine and the Moscow-backed rebels fighting in the east have also introduced tight restrictions on reporting from the combat zone. And that's it for Defense Dollars. When we return, personal finance expert Jeanette Mack gives you tips to protect your identity online.
Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack gives you tips to protect your identity online.
Banking online makes managing your finances and life much easier and more convenient. Just tap and you're in. But make sure that your passwords, account, and personal info are for your eyes only, because fraudsters are online looking for ways to tap into your account too. Always guard your personal information and practice online banking safety tips. Use strong passwords and vary them from account to account. The strongest passwords have upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters. And you may think it's a hassle, but change those passwords often. It can make it even harder for hackers to get into your personal info. Next, keep your software updated. Outdated software may not be enough over time, making it easier for viruses and malware to infiltrate your system. And here's something you may not think about, but it's always best to type your bank's web address in your browser yourself. Don't click links in an email or text, and never send your personal info that way either. Your bank or credit union wouldn't email or text asking for your personal information, ever. So don't do it. If you follow these tips, you're adding extra layers of protection to your accounts and keeping your money and info right where it belongs, with you.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next time. For more around-the-clock coverage of military and defense stories, head on over to Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Times.com and DefenseNews.com for the latest updates. And to get a curated list of top stories in your inbox every weekday, subscribe to our Early Bird Brief. And make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. When we return, we see what Navy SEALs will be using to travel underwater. Welcome back. One of the scariest skills Navy SEALs have is traveling from a submarine in a submersible. What's even scarier? That vehicle has been around since the 1980s. So SEAL teams are starting to use something a little more updated. Todd South has more in this week's MilTech.
Navy SEALs and cool weapons and gadgets. They go together like seals and beards, Oakleys, book deals, I don't know. Navy special operators seem to get all the cool stuff. And Military Times and Navy Defense News got a sneak peek at some of the latest items in their hands at the May Special Operations Forces Industry Conference in Tampa, Florida. First up, the SEALs are replacing a long-serving SEAL delivery vehicle called the Mark 8. It's a free-floating, wet submersible for underwater and shore reconnaissance, direct action missions, and insertion extraction from a host of amphibious missions. Basically, it's an open cockpit kind of mini submarine that kitted up SEALs can launch off a gray hull ship or a submarine and arrive hopefully undetected where they need to be. But the Mark 8 is a little bit long in the tooth. It's been running for more than 3 decades. So the Navy has come up with a replacement, and that replacement is, drum roll, the SDV Mark 11. SEALs are not known for their creative naming conventions. The Mark 11 has a beefed up, more digitally capable watercraft to replace the Mark 8. Basically can plug into all this 21st century stuff. That vehicle has been in development since the contract was awarded to Teledyne Brown Engineering back in 2011. It's coming online this year. The vehicles have already been delivered, and SEALs are out there testing them right now on the shore and near the shore. Or I guess in the water near the shore. I don't know. They expect those vehicles to be at full operational capability by fiscal year 2027. These SEAL delivery vehicles are cool. They offer a life support system that divers can plug into, use all their gear, equipment, and communicate. The Special Operations planners, engineers, and designers are also plussing up the communications gear too. They want users of any of these vehicles or any of these systems to be able to text, talk, and transmit data diver to diver, diver to platform, and platform to platform. So basically surface talking to underwater, talking to people, talking to everybody. And they've not quite cracked that nut yet. So they're asking industry to deliver the underwater comms goods. But what about the divers? Well, Navy Captain Randy Slaff, head of all things Spec Ops Maritime, pointed out that they've come a long way. I'm going to quote him here. Over the last 4 to 5 years, combat divers have gone from compasses and flashlights to jet boots, dive tablets, and thermal suits. Wow, leaping into the 21st century, if you will. Jim Knudsen, the SOF Combat Diver Program Manager, said they want to create a kind of systems of systems approach to the diver and the submersibles. So currently, a SEAL diver steps into the water weighing about 400 pounds, depending on his or her body weight. That can create some cramped, inflexible options for divers shoved into lock-in, lock-out chambers on a submarine or other options. And there's another wrinkle on that front. The Ohio-class Navy submarines, these nuclear subs that SEALs have long launched their vehicle from, they're reaching their end in this next decade. They're basically not going to be serviceable anymore. And that means underwater spec ops guys need a new way to insert their submersible or have a replacement be more flexible in how it gets to the fight. So Knudsen wants to connect it all, make the diver's suit and the breathing apparatus hook seamlessly into the delivery vehicle, also deliver mission-critical data, and save air for the swimming portion of that trip. All of these are ways to lighten up the load. Now, for those cool guy surface gunboats, such as the Combat Craft Heavy, Combat Craft Medium, and Combat Craft Assault, these new guns and capabilities are on the way. Combat Craft Medium is a long-range clandestine surface watercraft, basically just a speedboat. Think Miami Vice with more tech, more guns, and ready to kill you frogmen on board. Basically, it's a pirate's worst nightmare, other than the dentist probably. Now, the boats are being delivered by contractors at Vigor Works LLC and SOFSA Lockheed Martin. But what the program manager and his cohort really want, besides just the actual vessels and craft that is coming, is more firepower in the space that they've set aside for just that purpose. Before it was just some light machine guns. The boat carries between 8 and 10 passengers, and then he's getting an upgraded infrared radar system to help see what's going on out across the water, maybe above it and below it too. Navy SEAL Captain Rocky Russell said they're going to look for ways to have industry put loitering munitions on board, basically things that fly around and shoot what you want from the sky, your own personal drone. Maybe add a munition launcher and possibly a remote-controlled 50 caliber machine gun to the front of the boat. That's one pew-pew idea any stealthy sailor can get behind. More firepower, less problems. Reporting for Military Times, this is Todd South.
And that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.